always afraid this thing's not going to recognize me. No? Anyway, yeah, I guess I won't tell that story, but it's been 8 years since I've been here, since I've seen you guys. What a great thing to look around and see really so many familiar faces. And what a great thing to be able to be back here again. And I chose this lecture for that reason. I thought I'm coming to really my favorite center. And I thought I would choose my favorite topic to talk about the ideal. What are we up to? What are we trying to do? Or where are we going? And so this morning I just wanted to take the opportunity to swim in that ocean of bliss, as it were. That Thakur talks that way. He says, that we're like a fish swimming in the ocean of bliss, where we've come to the place where we take being and existing and living for granted. We've forgotten that we're surrounded by an ocean of bliss, forgotten that we're swimming through bliss itself, and life becomes humdrum. We start wondering what the meaning is and what the point is and where we're going in this. And so I thought, what a great opportunity just for us all to get together, to sit around the edge of the hot tub of bliss with our feet bathing in there and talk about this divine reality of where we're at, where we're going, and what's ours even in this moment. And the way that it sort of occurred to do it was to look at the ideal as being Sat Chit Ananda, and then taking each one of those words and breaking it down to what it means to us in this moment, at the present. That's one of my favorite things lately, is to constantly remind myself that this moment is the only real thing. The past is a concept that we've made up in our mind, and the future is a projection that we've made up in our mind. That really, out of only experiencing here and now, only experiencing the I am, we've produced all of this. We've put together an idea of cause and effect. We've put together an idea of karma. We've put together an idea of samskaras, all as a theory to explain our experience of here and now. And in the end, we realized that was helpful to come to an understanding, to come to a realization. But in the end, we throw out both of those thorns. We get rid of both of them. Not to experience something new, but to experience truly where we've always been, what we've always seen, what we've always known. To understand that on that day of realization, there will be nothing different. We'll just see things as they are, without the assumptions of the past, without the anxieties of the future, without the distractions of our nagging attachments and our begging desires, to be free from that. So I want to start with some quotes about Ramakrishna. Some people that were asked about him and his reminiscences and talked about him. The first one is Pratap Chandra Mazumdar. He says he was the right-hand man of Keshab, from the Brahmo Samaj anyway. And he says about Ramakrishna, he says, his religion is ecstasy. His worship means transcendental insight. His whole nature burns day and night with a permanent fire and a fever of a strange faith and feeling. So long as he is spared to us, gladly shall we sit at his feet to learn from him the sublime precepts of purity, unworldliness, spirituality, and inebriation in the love of God. There's so many things in there that just are beautiful. The idea of his religion is ecstasy. That's our ideal. And it's always my first question to myself. It's like, wow, do I experience it that way? Do I experience my practice as ecstasy? Do I experience my self-discipline, my renunciations, my studies, all of these things? Do I frame them in this idea that this is ecstatic? That Ramakrishna, who had mastered all of this, had to concentrate to stay out of ecstasy. He had to concentrate not to see God in the moment, to not experience divine love to the point that it short-circuited his senses in the moment. Because this is what is real. This is what is all around us at this moment. That is the state we would be in if we could be authentic, truly authentic for a moment. No pretense, and understanding deeply of who we are, what we are, that we are that I am. We are that existence itself. We are that bliss, the bliss that pops through or we become aware of any time that we fulfill a desire, that we are the culmination of everything we've ever wanted. And in this moment itself is defined as the culmination of every desire you've had so far. Every choice you've made has brought you here, has brought you to this moment, in the condition that you're in. Can you see the ecstasy? Can you see the joy? Are you experiencing that peace that passes all understanding? If not, don't plan for a future day. Don't think that by doing something you're going to manage to change something so that some imagined day in the future your realization will happen and you'll find joy when the conditions are different. That's not how it works. In that day that you're talking about, it will be the here and now. There is no imagined day in the future. This is your moment. This is your reality. And if you cannot find in you right now, in this moment, in these conditions, that ecstatic love, that enjoyment of the presence of God, that contentment of unity, it's not because of something that needs to be done. It's because something that needs to be laid down, not in the future, but now. Some surrender has to happen, some letting go, some visor that's covering your eyes and not allowing you to see what you will see when you do come to that place of letting go. Because our realization is not, it's not a composite. It's not a building up of parts. It's not an achievement. It's not somewhere that we're going. It's a releasing of all of the hypnotism that we've gone through by running after desires, by not knowing our nature, not knowing what we are, not knowing who we are, not understanding it, not accepting it, finding it unreasonable. Why? Because we've identified with finite things. We've identified with limited things. And that inner spirit that gives us these ideas of immortality and infinity and bliss and joy and happiness is trying to squeeze through these narrow gates of the senses to recreate itself in the finite, an impossible task, something that can't be done, and is ultimately just an exercise in frustration, which is that point in our life we can never get enough because we're going out into a finite world to express an infinite ideal, to express an infinite existence, an infinite bliss. And the senses cannot do it. And when they're presented with it, at that moment our religion becomes a religion of ecstasy, an ecstatic religion with transcendental insight. Transcendental to what? It's a knowing finally of who you are, of being able to see, understand, and know the distinction between the body, between the mind, and that which is observing both of them. That self, which has contained within it everything that you've sought, thinking you were a mind, in your thinking and education and your philosophy, everything thought that you might find through the body in its pleasures and its appetites and its hungers. And when we come to that place where we know those things have nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me, and you think, how is that possible? And I always think of the dream. In that dream last night that you had another body. How easily you accepted that other body. You may not even remember what it looked like. It may not have even been human. It may not have even been complete. It might have just been a pair of hands. But in that dream, you had no question. This is who I am and this is what I am. And in that dream world that you were living in, you were running from a gang in downtown New York City, who knows? But you completely accepted it as real. You see how easy delusion comes to us. How easily we can adopt any body. There's no special thing about adopting this one. We can adopt any world. There's nothing so special about this one. So letting go of that is the same as being in the dream and trying to realize or know that you're dreaming. And if you're in the dream and you realize that you're dreaming, what has changed? The dream's still going on. You're still playing your part. But you know it to be a dream, which does what? It sets you free. It sets you free inside. It gives you fearlessness. It gives you creativity. It gives you bliss. It gives you joy. Swami Vivekananda says of God that the God of love is his own proof. He says his ideal becomes one of perfect love. That would be a wonderful conversation, to sit in a circle right now and just go around and say, what is perfect love? What does it mean to you? What do you understand? And the interesting thing about that is none of us has been trained in what love is. None of us has been given a scientific definition. This is what love is. And as a matter of fact, almost any definition that you come up with for love at this moment is going to be wanting in the end. It's going to be too small to contain it. And we'll go around that circle again and again and again and again. And that love would grow deeper and our insights would increase. And it would go on and on and on. Why? Because love is a synonym for the divine, for God. For that pure love, for that infinite love that dwells within us. His ideal becomes one of perfect love, one of perfect fearlessness of love. In the presence of fear, perfect love casts out fear, according to Jesus. Or I guess it was maybe Paul who said that. But to have your love perfected, you're free of fear. You've come to know your nature as being that pure love. What of a body? You've dropped off a body every morning when you wake up, from your sleep. You've given up a body. That dream body is no longer there. You've given up a life. That dream life is no longer there. And all the sages say, such as this, what you experience now. You'll let it go, just like you let go of the dream body every night. You'll let go of that world. And you'll transcend. Transcend what? Just the delusion, the idea of a dream. And you'll be free. Know who you are. So his ideal is one of perfect love, one of perfect fearlessness. The highest ideal of such a person has no narrowness of particularity about it. No narrowness, not a certain amount of narrowness, not a certain amount of particularity, none. No particularity. It's the complete absence of your ego, the complete absence of your necessity to define yourself. To grab onto an attribute and say, that one is me, that one's me. Swamiji says that your idea of who you are right now, this personality that all of us cherish so much in ourselves, he says when you look at it objectively, you see that it's just a bundle of restrictions and limitations. Just a set of narrow ideas where you've decided, I don't like that, I do like that, I look like this, I feel like this, I dress like this, I do these things for fun, I avoid those things at all cost, that is all the ego is composed of. The ego is this made-up story of your past, the made-up story of your cumulative sense of existence. But your entire existence is here. Your entire existence is now. So that story you have full permission to let go of, to be undefined. You don't have to behave in the way that you've always behaved. You don't have to think in the way that you've always thought. If you were depressed yesterday, or were told last week or 10 years ago that you were a depressed person, you don't have to be a depressed person. You don't have to be anything. The mind may not change. The mind may stay depressed. But you can know that you are not depressed. You may be looking through a depressed mind, but you are not depressed. You are ever free, ever pure, and ever blissful. And it's up to you on which side of that line you're going to place your weight. Which one of those two truths are you going to repeat to yourself every morning when you get up? Are you going to wake up and fall into the depressed mode of like, oh, God, here we go again, Or are you going to wake up and be, I'm free today. I can love today. I always like to remind people, in this day and age, things seem so defined. The game seems as if it's been gamed. that we're all just kind of stuck. We're cubicle mice, running along through our maze, doing our thing, and you stand up and you look over the edge of the cubicle to this big room of cubicles, and you're like, oh my God, this is it? This is life? And the answer is yes, this is life. If you think yourself an accountant, if you think yourself an office worker, yes, that's your life. But if you know yourself to be love, that's an opportunity. That's not a definition. You can go to the office and incidentally be an accountant, incidentally be a CEO, incidentally be anything that your job title might say, but in fact you're a manifestation of pure love, of pure existence, of pure bliss, of pure intelligence. And you can go to that office and incidentally you'll get your work done, but you're there to love. You're there to encourage. You're there to feel and to have compassion, to see that oneness. Every conversation becomes a prayer with who? God? What does that mean? God is some concept that every one of us has a different idea about, a different consortium of ideas and definitions about. Let's use the word love instead. God is love. So what do you serve? You serve love. What do you believe in? You believe in love. What do you think exists eternally? Love. Love and love and love. No arguments. Who's going to walk out and say, I don't believe in love? Who's going to walk out and say, oh, what an idea, what an outmoded idea, love, that's crazy. Change your vocabulary. Set yourself free. See your world differently because you are free. You are undefined. You are not a creature of habit. You are not defined by an age, by a gender, by a body, by a hair color, by a nationality, by a religion, by a philosophy. You are free, undefined. You can be any and all of those things, or none of them. The highest ideal of such a person has no narrowness of particularity about it. It is love universal, love without limits and bonds, love itself, love absolute. Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel, the eternal religion, that religion of forever, I love to, as a meditation, go back in my mind to the day when there weren't boxes of religion. There wasn't the box of Christian, the box of Islam, the box of Jewish, the box of Buddhist, but there was just people wondering, what's going on? What the heck is this? Where did my grandmother just go? Why did I go from loving that body to suddenly being abhorred by that body? What changed? What's happening in this world? From the day when you didn't have to go and take a book off the shelf to learn about who you are, what is this thing called religion, where you didn't have to make choices between these sages and these sages, or those people and these people. But you walked outside into the woods and you were like, this is amazingly beautiful. How do I know what beauty is? How did I recognize beauty when I saw it? No one has ever taught me that. You feel love from your parents, from your friends. I love these people. Well, what does that mean? How did I know love? How do I recognize it when I see it? How am I so sure of it when I experience it? To walk outside and to be in communion with this mystery and wondering and seeing and recognizing, wow, my whole life, my body has been changing, my mind has been changing, but I have been steadily the same looking out through both of them. There's something here that doesn't change. That I that has been the same me when I was 3, 5, 7, 47, 87. I looked out of these eyes. I watched a mind. How is it that I ever thought that I was either one of those things if I have been watching them for all these years? To return to that day of freedom, where it wasn't about other ideas and other people's training, but when it was about the inner guru, the silence of the day, where the knowledge of self could teach you who you are. No particularity about it at all. The sense of understanding, I am. And that in itself was an ecstatic experience. He says this eternal religion, this religion of the rishis, has been in existence from time out of mind and will exist eternally. It is an always situation. It's not something that's rooted in time. This person came at this date, and so that was the beginning of this philosophy. This one happened at that time, and that was the beginning of that philosophy. Religion, this quest for knowledge of what and who this is, the nature of this experience of being, is immortal, infinite, has been going on forever and will continue to go on forever. There exist in this Sanatana Dharma, this eternal religion, all forms of worship. Worship of God with form, worship of God without form, worship of the impersonal deity. It contains all paths, the path of knowledge, the path of devotion, and so on. This is our ideal. It's not the names and the forms that we get hung up on. We look at something, anything that we see, and we say, that is my beloved. And we see the qualities of the beloved in it, and we begin to understand that all of our desire has happened because we saw our beloved and didn't know his name, confused him with an object, confused her with an experience, confused that with a feeling, not knowing that it was reflection, that which was looking through my mind, that which was looking through my eyes, is being reflected back to me, and that unity, that oneness. And that's what this daily practice of discernment is about. It's looking at your object of desire until you see the name of God that is being reflected in it. And then knowing that that has been your desire. Hafiz has that beautiful poem where he says, every desire of your body is holy, which almost every religious person would hear that and be like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. No. You can't go there, you can't go there. And then he says it again, every desire of your body is holy. And you're getting even more nervous, you're starting to sweat a little bit. Like, no. And then he says it a third time, every desire of your body is holy. Now, does that mean that the desire as it manifests through a body? Because a body is going to want body things. A mind is going to want mind things. But the desire that drives them both is the manifesting love of the soul within, that divine nature. And when you come to know with sureness, come to know with conviction that all that you see is a reflection of that one, when you come to know that that self, that you, that has never changed, though the body and mind is constantly a kaleidoscope of color and change, that experience of being is the same in each one of us. And when we know that our pain is the same in each one of us, when we know that our experiences of love, of hope, of freedom, that all of that is the same in each one of us, then compassion is natural. Giving is natural. Intimacy is natural. Honesty is natural. And being is bliss, an ecstatic experience of oneness. There's a story in the gospel about a woman named Bhagavati. And you've probably heard it. It's one of my favorite stories. I just find it intensely sweet. And I had to think about it quite a bit because it's actually also a very difficult story to digest. Let me read it to you here. After a time, Bhagavati, an old maidservant of the temple proprietor, entered the room and saluted the master, Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna bade her to sit down. The master had known her for many years. In her younger days, she had lived a rather immoral life. But the master's compassion was great. Soon he began to converse with her. All right, so already we've got an interesting situation. You have a divine incarnation, the manifestation of God herself, himself, that self, sitting in a room, and somebody walks in whose past that they carry with them, that they identify with, is one of immorality. That insecurity she must have felt because she sits in the back of the room when she enters. But the master talks to her. Already he's breaking a boundary. First of all, it's a woman. It's an immoral woman. And she's in a temple and coming to visit him. And he reaches out and he says to her, the most offensive thing you could say to a woman who's come to visit you, now you're getting pretty old. He says that. First thing, oh, Bhagavati, you're getting pretty old. Have you been feeding the Vaishnavas and holy men, and thus spending your money in a noble way? So he's bringing her mind to her life. What are you doing with your life? You're old. You've reached a certain place. How are you living? How are your ideas working out for you? How are your habits coming to fruition for you? Have they taught you that this moment is bliss? Have they taught you that this moment is the height of intelligence? It's the joy of being. Have you seen that yet? Have you learned to give? Have you begun to see yourself in everyone? Have you begun to see your beloved in the eyes of everyone you talk to? She looks at him smiling, a little sheepishly, you can imagine. How can I say that? The Master says, well, have you been to at least Vrindavan, Benares, the other holy places? Checking her desires. What have you been looking for? What have you gone in search of? Where do you go for your enjoyment? Have you gone to these holy places for enjoyment? Have you come to the feet of the beloved within for your enjoyment? She says again, a little more sheepishly, I know this look. How can I say that? No, I haven't done that. And then she says, how can I say that? And she's, of course, in her mind panicking, thinking, all right, I've got 0 for 2 here. And she says, oh, but you know what? I have built a bathing ghat, and my name actually is on the little plaque there on a stone. Right? So she's built a bathing ghat. Ramakrishna says, indeed! He's very excited about it. And then she's more excited. Yes, sir, my name, Srimati Bhagavati Dasi. It's written there. The Master smiles. How nice. How nice. Because pure love always encourages. Pure love always hopes. Pure love always believes. Pure hope, pure love never fails. It keeps no record of wrongs. These are all ideas from Corinthians in the Christian Bible about love. So our beloved Master sits and looks at her through this knowledge of pure love. And she says, yes, sir, my name is written there. How nice. Emboldened by the Master's words, Bhagavati approaches him and salutes him, touching his feet. Like a man stung by a scorpion, Sri Ramakrishna stands up and cries out, Govinda, Govinda! And a big jar of Ganges water is on the other corner of the room. He runs to it, panting, and washes with holy water the spot that this maidservant had touched on his feet. The devotees in the room were amazed to see this incident. Bhagavati sat as if struck dead. That pain. You come in touch with this pure love. It encourages you. You find hope. But you're still believing in yourself. You see, her greatest accomplishment of that time was her name inscribed on a plaque on a rock. That was her ideal. And that's what she brought. And when she touched the Master, the pain to him, the pain of that ignorance, he knew it wasn't a new pain to him. It wasn't her impurity that caused him pain. It was because he knew her deepest inner pain at having chosen her name as her identity, having chosen a rock with a plaque as her eternity. He felt the pain that she had long ago distracted herself from. He felt her pain deep within his own soul, the pain of ignorance, the pain of not knowing, the pain of having no idea, of the pain of living in a material world where nothing is enough, the pain of an existence where love is begged for and earned, and is always metered out in small little egotistic pieces. You came to my party, I'll invite you to the next one. You called me, I'll call you. You wrote back to me, I'll write you again. this merchant paradise that she lived in, when expressed to the master in a touch, was the worst pain he could imagine, and had to run to Ganga water, to the idea of God, to the idea of purity, to touch that space that brought him relief from that. And it says, in order to relieve her mind of all of its embarrassment, the master said tenderly to her, listen to a few songs. So she goes from being this woman who has, in one sense, been shamed publicly in front of everyone, someone who's utterly embarrassed, utterly mortified, but now completely open, now completely beyond herself. He sits down next to her and sings her a song, the only woman that I know of in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna who is sung to by God himself, who is sung to by the beloved. And what does he sing to her? He says, dwell, O mind, within yourself. Enter no other's home. If you but seek there, you will find all that you've been searching for, Bhagavati. Go within yourself. Stop being defined by the world you inhabit. Stop looking outside of yourself for the things that put your name out there, that identify a personality, a particular, a smallness, a limitation, a restriction. Look inside. There's something more to you than you've ever imagined. You're not an immoral woman by definition. You're something free, something beautiful, something of a treasure. God, the true philosopher's stone, who answers every prayer, lies hidden deep within your heart, the richest gem of them all. This true philosopher's stone, this knowledge, this existence of who you really are, will turn everything in this world to gold, to the knowledge of love, to the knowledge of immortality, to the knowledge of infinity, and awaken in you an infinite love, an infinite joy that's untouchable. The manifestation of a soul that cannot be burned, cannot be wedded, cannot die, cannot be injured. This self that has existed on the other side of mind and body, who has been searching for an experience of its own being through the delusions of limitation, can be free, can know that freedom. It lies hidden deep within your heart, this richest gem of all. How many pearls, how many precious stones are scattered all about the outer court that lies before the chamber of your heart. It's like Bhagavati, you are worth something. You are beautiful and important as you are. But as you think you are is nothing but pain, nothing but smallness and limitation. Everything you touch disappears. The car you buy rusts away. The house you buy falls down. The love you married dies. The body you cherish grows old, melts, and dies. But there's something in you, something you haven't seen, that's pure, that's a treasure, that's the richest of all gems, that is the summation of everything you've ever touched, heard, tasted, smelled, or even thought. You are a manifestation of the highest ideal, Bhagavati. Can you find that self behind all of that? Can you separate yourself from the idea of being an immoral woman? Can you separate yourself from the idea of being a woman, being a man? Can you separate yourself from the idea of being in time? Can you stop the story of your mind that tells you what you are at every moment? Can you stop the story of your body that is aging, drooping, growing at every moment? Can you touch that unchanging self that has been there since the day you sat in the back seat of the car looking out the window, dreaming of being an adult when you could finally be free? When finally you could get away from your parents and not be told what time to go to bed. All those desires of a young man or a young woman, And then you get to be that adult. And you're like, oh, for the days of a child, when I didn't have to worry about a mortgage and about marriages and about children and colleges. Those days when I was free. And in that is the lesson. So let's break down this idea of existence. You are that. You are Sat Chit Ananda. What does this mean? Existence. What is it? Swamiji says in Jnana Yoga, we have first of all to give up this superstition of a body. There's a new definition of superstitious for you. It's not thinking of ghosts. It's not wondering about mediums. You're superstitious if you think you got up and washed your body in the shower this morning. You're superstitious if you sit there and think you had a good night's sleep last night. He says, next, we must go the further we are not the body. Next must go the further superstition that we are mind. We are not the mind. It is but the silken body, not any part of the soul. The mere word body, applied to nearly all things, includes something common among all bodies. This is existence. Our bodies are symbols of the thoughts behind them. And the thoughts themselves are, in their turn, symbols of something behind them. That is the one real existence, the soul of our soul, the self of the universe, the life of our life, our true self. As long as we believe ourselves to be even the least different from God, believe ourselves in the least different from love, absolute, fear will remain with us. But when we know ourselves to be the one, fear goes. Of what can we be afraid? That which cannot be divided, that which cannot be burned, broken, wedded, that which has no expiration, is outside of time itself. What is there to fear? Vivekananda goes on to say how wonderful this is. Look at the human eye, he says, how easily it can be destroyed, and yet the biggest suns exist only because your eyes see them. The world exists because your eyes certify that it exists. Think of that mystery. These poor little eyes, a strong light or a pin can destroy them. And yet the most powerful engines of suns and stars and moons and earths all depend for their existence upon and have to be certified by these two little things. They say, nature, you exist, and we believe nature exists. And so it is with each one of our senses. What is this? Where is weakness? Who is strong? What is great? What is small? What is high and low in this marvelous interdependence of existence where the smallest atom is necessary for the existence of the whole? Who is great and who is small? It is past finding out. And why? Because none is great and none is small. All things are interpenetrated by that infinite ocean. Their reality is that infinite. And whatever there is on the surface is but that infinite. The tree, infinite. So is everything that you see or feel. Every grain of sand, every thought, every soul, everything that exists is infinite. Infinite is finite, and the finite infinite. This is our existence. Did anybody think about that on the way here from the car? I had a cup of coffee in the kitchen. Was I thinking about, wow, look at this thing. This is amazing. What is it? What is its nature? That's what it is to not live a life of assumption. To stop assuming so comfortably that we know what everything is. To stop listening to a mind that long ago gave up its quest, boxed reality into a small subset of definitions that any toddler can challenge with 5 questions. Why, and why? At that 5th why, the wisest man is red in his face. Because that's the way it is. Your whole worldview, as you assume, is something that a toddler can challenge and dismantle in 5 questions. Be free. Stop seeing the assumed world and experience this infinity, this mystery, this marvel, this wonder that is living, that is being, that is experiencing. On intelligence, he says in Jnana Yoga, no one can know existence except through knowledge, through intelligence. You know, this wall, this 3-component self, we'll call it for fun this morning, that body, that mind, and the self, which, that itself will collapse at the end. And for now, we'll hold them 3 separate things. All of the things that come in through your senses. You see, the problem of life is that all these things coming in, we're only seeing a unity. But the first thing that we have to do in order to have an experience is to break that unity into 5 pieces. We have to either touch it, taste it, smell it, hear it. What's the one I missed? Something else out there. We have to break everything that we experience of the unity that is the reality. We have to break it into 5 pieces. And then we have to take those 5 pieces in the mind and we have to sit there and sort through them and try and build this puzzle of unity. Like, okay, what is the relationship between that taste, and this smell? Oh, God, I don't know. Let's see. And so our mind just tries to reconstruct the unity that it's experiencing, that it had to break into 5 pieces to digest. And of course, we're failing. Because we have no idea that it's a unity that we're seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, and hearing. We think that the world is at least 5 pieces and maybe many more pieces. And so we live lost. So everything that comes in through your senses gets thrown against a wall in the mind. And that wall is intelligent. That wall says, what just hit me? And it starts to analyze it and break it down and create an understanding that ultimately leads you to an auditorium in the hills of Southern California to study philosophy and to hear someone talk about something that you have a sense about, you have a feeling about, you have an intuition about, but it's something you've never tasted, never touched, never smelled, never heard. And things begin to roll, and you begin to wonder and think, maybe it's not going to come from out there in 5 separate pieces in the mail to the mind. And you begin to wonder and think about the nature of it. You begin to realize, I'm not even sure there's an out there. This is one of my favorite little tidbits. I remember the first time that this occurred to me. Freaked me out, actually, for several days. The fact that I could not verify the source of my senses. That I've never seen a light. I look at this bright light right here and I think, oh, that's what a light looks like. I have no idea what a light looks like. My brain sits inside of a cranium that has never seen the light of day, hopefully. Never seen the light of day. It has no idea what light is, has no idea what light looks for. So the eye sees that, but that light doesn't go to the brain. The eye takes that and breaks it up into little pieces of information and sends it through the nerve. So I get little nerve impulses to a section of my brain. And that section of my brain says, okay, that's light. Let's come up with a good idea about what light is. Let's make it look like this. This will be our symbol for light. Since we've never seen it, we have no idea what it is. And then that's repeated for sound, and that's repeated for taste, and that's repeated for touch. And then the mind tells us, you say, well, how do you know that that's what it looks like? And you're like, oh, well, the eye saw it. The eye saw it. It's like, no, the eye didn't see it. The eye is as much a symbol for the source of light as the light is already. The ear, my mind has created an ear as the source of sound. My mind has created my skin as a source of touch information. But all of it is merely a symbol in a world of thought. And I have no idea who the subject and object is in that world. I have no idea what's going on with that. No idea. So he says we have to understand our existence, we have to have this intelligence, this curiosity, this wonder, this ability to reconstruct a unity. He says, take an individual man. He has first a part of undifferentiated nature in him. something that's not broken into pieces. That's self, deep within. And that material nature in him becomes changed into this Mahat, a small particle of this universal intelligence. And this particle of universal intelligence in him becomes changed into egoism. And then into the sense organs and the fine particles of matter which combine and manufacture the idea of his body. In his lessons on Raja Yoga, he says this Atman is pure intelligence controlling and directing prana. But the intelligence we see around us is always imperfect. That's something we don't even have to be told. Everybody else's intelligence, suspect. My intelligence, pretty good. When intelligence is perfect, we get the incarnation. We get a Christ, we get a Buddha, we get a Rama, a Ramakrishna, a Holy Mother. When intelligence is perfect, we get the incarnation, the Christ. Intelligence is always trying to manifest itself. And in order to do this, it is creating minds and bodies of different degrees of development. In reality, and at the back of all things, every being is equal. But what is knowledge? What is Vijnana, this supreme knowledge? It is knowing God. It is knowing love in a special way. The awareness and the conviction that fire exists in wood is jnana, or knowledge. But to cook rice on that fire, to eat the rice and to get nourished from that rice, that is supreme knowledge. That is Vijnana. To know God, that's philosophy. To get an idea of God, that's religion. But to be able to manifest pure love into the world, that's love. That's the knowledge of love. To see no distinction, to have no sense of particularity, which is a very nice way of saying to be free of ego, free of me and mine. What does that allow us to do? That allows the mind to become placid, free of desire, free of lack, free of delusion, free of need of any kind. It allows you to see this moment as it is, and reflected in this moment will be that whole moon, pure and easily recognized as one without a second. It's those fingers of ego, two fingers, one called me and the other one called mine. And when those two fingers start stirring up the water of your mind, that singular, beautiful moon, one without a second, becomes 1,000 shards of unrecognizable light. And you see a world of multiples. You see a world where you are such a small part, you wonder, oh my God, what's going to eat me next? You know? Calm the mind. Remove that sense of individuation, of separateness from it. To know by one's inner experience that God exists is jnana. But to talk to him, to enjoy him as a child, as a friend, as master, as beloved, is vijnana. Now, immediately when you hear those different categories, you think, oh, how I approach God in the shrine. Is that what he said? He said, no, but to talk to him as a child. Talk to a child and recognize the beloved there. That's supreme knowledge. Talk to a friend and see the divine beloved behind their eyes, behind their mind. That's true knowledge. Listen to your favorite song and to hear the voice of the beloved in that, to recognize beauty in its pure form, even without the sound. That is supreme knowledge. To see a flower and to know that that beauty is part of you. It's what is that self, that image of God, the image of the beloved, the image of love itself that is within you, that is recognizing itself. To see that is vijnana. The feeling I am the doer, that comes when those two fingers are stirring that ocean of mind. Those two fingers of me and mine. God alone is the doer, Sri Ramakrishna says. He says, but the feeling that God does everything is due to knowledge. God alone is the doer. All others are mere instruments in his hands. After attaining knowledge, a man says, God, nothing belongs to me. Why? because there is no particular here. I'm free of ego. I'm not even a point of reference. I'm a universal oneness. It's when you're walking through the dream and you realize in your dream last night that you are not the point of reference in that dream. How could you be? Everything that you're seeing within your own mind is you. You have made it. You have told the story, the whole dream, everything that you're tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, and seeing is you. You're not just the point of reference. That is supreme knowledge. Now we come to love. Unfortunately, for the next 4 minutes, I'd like to spend all day on this one. The first test of love is that it knows no bargaining, right? It does not keep track of a sense of debt and payment, credits and debts. It doesn't keep track of faults. It doesn't keep track of you owe me, I owe you. You've offended me, I've offended you. You're greater than I am, I'm greater than you are. How dare you say that? How dare you talk to me that way? You're not paying me enough. These things have nothing to do with love. The first test of love, it knows no bargaining. So long as you see a man love another only to get something from him, you know that is not love. It is shopkeeping. The second test is to know that love knows no fear. There's no insecurity. As when we grow mature, when we know our nature, we never feel like we're not invited to the party. We never feel that we're not good looking enough, that we're not tall enough, that we're not young enough. We never feel that sense of lack. Insecurity is unknown to us. Why? Because we're fully at home with the love we see in everyone's eyes. We're fully at home at the recognition of beauty that we see everywhere. We're fully at home at the infinite story that's manifesting in front of us that we make eons of assumptions about. Love is always the highest ideal. This is the final test. When one has passed through the first two stages, when one has thrown off all shopkeeping, cast off all of their fears and insecurities, one then begins to realize that love is always the highest ideal. Now, why does he say love is always the highest ideal? Because you have an ideal, it's always the highest, and it's infinite. So when you reach your highest ideal of love and lift your eyes, it's higher. It's more so. Now, what's beautiful about that? What's beautiful about that is Swami Brahmananda's words. You nirvi kalpa samadhi, the highest realization that we as a body can experience, or we as a person or an entity, any word that I choose is going to get me in trouble. That, anything that is experienced beyond experience, that nirvi kalpa samadhi, what we consider the capstone of religion, is just the beginning, he says, of spiritual life. What does that mean? Does that mean, oh my God, I'm going to have to strive forever to get nowhere because it's always infinitely? No, it means you're going to fall in love infinitely forever. You're going to fall in love every moment of your existence forever. It's never going to be fully known. It's never going to be finished. It's always more beautiful than the place you're standing. It's always higher than the idea you've made. It's always bigger than your idea of infinity. The lover has passed beyond all these things, beyond rewards and punishments, beyond fears and doubts, beyond scientific or any other demonstration. Sufficient unto him is the ideal of love. And is it not self-evident that this universe is but a manifestation of this love? What is it that makes atoms unite with atoms, molecules with molecules? What is it that causes planets to fly toward each other? What is it that attracts man to a man, woman to a woman, man to a woman to a man, and the animals to animals, drawing the whole universe, as it were, toward one center? It is love. Its manifestation is from the lowest atom to the highest being, omnipotent, all-pervading is this love. What manifests itself as attraction in the sentient and the insentient, in the particular and in the universal, is the love of the divine. It is the one motive power that is in this universe. Under the impetus of that love, Christ gives his life for humanity. Buddha gives his life for an animal. The mother for the child. The husband for his wife. It is under this impetus of the same love that men are ready to give up their lives for their country. And strange to say, under this same impetus of love, the thief steals, the murderer murders. It will avail you nothing, Ramakrishna says, if you realize Satchitananda, unless you realize Satchitananda, unless you understand your nature, unless you let go of these ideas that belong to the dream, that you're a particular perspective, that everything around you is separate and other. When you give up these ideas, there is nothing like discrimination, discernment, and renunciation. Giving up this unreal for what you have already. Satisfaction in the moment, the perfection of being, no matter what the experience. This knowing that you are full and infinite, that you are free, that the mind has conditions and the body has conditions, and they literally have nothing to do with you. The worldly man's devotion to God is momentary, like a drop of water on a red-hot frying pan. Penance. Perchance he looks at a flower and exclaims, "Oh, what a wonderful creation of God." But to know God is to walk with her, to dance with her, to argue with her, to fight with him, to look for him and her that in every set of eyes you pass, every experience of the senses that touches you, that sings to you, that strokes you, that dances for you, to see nothing but love as its motive, love as its nature, to see and understand the oneness of the dream, and to know that it is all within you, that universal, infinite, endless idea of love, you, your own ideal.
Well, thank you, Swami Chidbrahmananda. We're done for questions or comments. Well, 1, 2, 3. Let's start there.
Swami, can you explain to me or to us how a person like Putin is acting on love?
Yes, definitely. It's a very difficult thing to do, mostly because we have our own particularizations that are going to rebel against it. Putin, I don't know about Putin, but let's make an imaginary character named. How can you explain what Putin is doing as love, as pure love? Putin loves his ideal. Putin loves his Russia. Putin loves his power. Putin loves the idea of expansion. Putin loves whatever he's running after, whatever he's trying to attain or accomplish by what he's doing. And he loves it more than he feels revulsion for what it's causing in a select group of people. You know, the world is organized between two extremes. We can say we have a Hitler on the left and we have a Jesus or a Buddha on the right. And everything in between is the rest of the world. What's the difference between those? You see, you study the ideal of a Hitler and it's material. It has to do with a race and a nation, the height of a forehead, the color of a hair, the color of eyes. That was his. And his ideal was extremely exclusive. It benefited a very small number of people, but it benefited them greatly. And it harmed millions, destroyed millions. But he had his ideal. He had the thing he loved, the vision he was going after. But he identified it with the material world. On the other hand, we have a Buddha or a Jesus. What's the difference? They knew their nature, to not be a body, to not be material, to not be mind. And their ideal hurts a very small number of people. Somebody crucified Jesus. That's how bad they felt hurt by his ideal. But he had a love for those things of the spirit, which included the vast majority of us. You see, so everything in the world falls within that gradation. The more you identify with the senses, the more small you become, the more threatening the world becomes, and the more violent your reaction to it becomes. The more you identify yourself as infinite spirit, that one without a second, the more peaceful, the more tranquil, the more pure, the more loving you manifest as. So all of us exist between those two endpoints as an expression. Namaskar.
My question is, why we are not, why it is always necessary to background check?
To background check.
For manifestation of our law. We are true.
Why do we, okay, can you...
We need the background check to express our law, pure law.
A background check. Okay, I'm not sure I'm following you. I'll jump into it and see if I'm getting it right. Why are we the way we are? Because we want to be. Yeah. We like it. We don't like the pain, but we kind of get this sense that, well, this is as good as it gets for us. We've accepted the limitations. We've become accustomed to our boundaries. We've become accustomed to the way the world is. We've collected a set of habits for ourselves that we're very comfortable with. You know, because if you take an ego, that sense of self which is individuated, and you throw it into the infinite, it feels infinitely insecure. It feels infinitely small. So that self, as long as we hold on to this ego idea, this sense of being separate from God, being separate from everything and everyone, as long as we hold on to that, our limitations and restrictions are comforting to us. And no one's going to be able to peel our white knuckles off of that sense of individuated self. This is me. And so we have to go through a process of undoing that ignorance that's keeping us clutching to the security of our assumptions, to the security of our habits, to the security of existing as a small self in a big world. And so it's only through a lot of practice that we can let go enough to hear and feel and sense this self that can't be objectified. Because for our whole life we have been taught that knowledge is looking out, taking in, breaking it into categories and defining the relationships between them. So the mind is always grabbing three pieces: the subject, the object, and the relationship between them. Right? So we're accustomed, when we want to have a good meditation, we see it as an experience. Well, if there's an experience, there's two, right? There's actually three. All three of those components are going to come in there. We have to come to the point where we understand that the self has to be intuited. What does that mean? That means that instead of seeing everything as changing and just leaving as that, well, everything's changing, we have to understand, what does that imply? For me to see that change, I can't be a part of it. And since I can see all this change, I must be changeless. If you're inside of an elevator and it's moving, you have no evidence that the elevator's moving, unless it's an old one. You see, because everything's moving with you. You're part and parcel of the system that is changing, so you can't see it. When you're in a car, you're looking down at the floor, not out the windows. You don't know that it's moving because you're part and parcel of the change. You are the change, so you can't sense it. The fact that you can see all of this change, the fact that you know everything is changing, implies a fundamental truth, that you are standing in a place, or perhaps you are that place, that is not changing, that is not limited. And you take that and understand that and grow into that idea. And then you start to understand there's some things that you know that you could not have been taught by this external world. The idea of infinity. Where did that come from? What did you ever see that was infinite? We know through science that not even the universe is infinite, that there's boundaries to everything. And yet we're very comfortable with this idea of infinity. The idea of immortality. Where did you come up with that? What did you see or touch, taste, smell, or hear that was immortal. You brought that idea into this world with you. It is your own nature. So you see, we have to learn to not have any organs of action, to turn every organ that we have, every ability that we have, into one giant ear, and to let that imply ourself, because ourself is the one and only thing that cannot be objectified. It cannot be put in front of you to be digested through the 5 windows of mind. It cannot be reassembled into an infinite whole. So it's an implication, and that implication only becomes apparent when you let go of everything and stop all identity with particular and let yourself be implied. Just like your face. You will never see your face, but no one will say, I don't have one. Right? Your face is implied. You can see its reflection, but that's not your face. And we see a reflection of the divine, everything, everywhere. And it's not being reflected out there, it's being reflected in your mind. We've already determined that. We have no source for this information. It's a reflection of mind. Your mind is simply the reflection of you. And this is how it looks. This is what it is to be divine, to be in divinity. So to come to that and to let go of the idea that we have to grab something, hold it, objectify it, study it, and find its relationship to everything else, which is what knowledge means to us as a material identity. To learn to not do that, to find a way of studying that doesn't involve separating and relating. That's why we're in this mess.
How do we find the balance between striving for this ideal of knowing ourselves to be Satchidananda and being relatable to the people in our lives?
You will be more relatable than... Love is the ultimate relation. By manifesting love, which is what happens as you let go of these false notions of self, because, when you let go of them, what manifests? Satchitananda manifests. Intelligence manifests. Love manifests. Existence itself is a manifestation of that. So we are the verb of God. So you become infinitely relatable. Jesus was infinitely relatable. He could talk to anybody. He could be intimate with anyone. Ramakrishna, anyone. He was open. No judgments, no requirements, no laws, no legalities. He loved you from first sight because he knew you and knows you intimately because he actually knows that his self and your self are identical. He knows that you are in his dream or that he's in your dream, as it were. Sri Nisargadatta says that. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is that saint in Bombay who made cigarettes. Well, he had an American devotee, actually, that was asking him a question. The American devotee says, look, you're sitting there and you're realized. You see God in everything. You know all this stuff. I'm sitting here. I have no idea. I'm trying to get an understanding from you. Can't you do something to help me? And Sri Nisargadatta says this amazing thing to him. He says, I have. I am appearing in your dream and I am telling you that you are sleeping. So yes. It's our ego that makes us unrelatable. It's our body that says we can only relate to these people. It's our nationality that says we can only like these people. Or it's the individuation that's causing the alienation. Truth and realization is pure relatability.
In today's fractured society, how can love manifest and what part can we play in this?
Do your practice. That's all. There's nothing out there to do. That's just, in one way, anything that you do as an ego self, anything that you identify yourself as the doer for, is always going to have good and bad attached to it. You can't serve anyone. You can't help anyone. So what Ramakrishna says, what Swami Vivekananda says, He says, do everything as an act of worship, which means do it in the moment without a story of why and a story of where. Let it be as it is. Do it with excellence and without any sense of accomplishment or result. And just let it go in its moment. That is the only way that good happens. If it's tied to an ego, if it's tied to a motive, if it's tied to a result, it will always have an impurity to it. So learn to be. Shut off the mind. We often think, if I stop thinking, I'm stupid. I'm going to be dull. I'm going to be just some drooling idiot. And that would be true if you were made of wood. But you're not. You are divine by nature. And so by stopping the ideation of self, the self manifests, the fire burns, the light shines. And so don't do it through a mind, which has past, present, and future, has cause and effect, has time. Do it simply because. And follow the impetus. Know that God alone is the doer. Any other one is an imagination. If I think I'm the one making it happen. The body will still get hungry and feed itself. You just don't have to be attached to whether it does or not. The mind knows it has to go to work tomorrow, and it knows what time to get up, and it will do that. When you know yourself not to be the mind, you will watch it do that. And so live in the world like that. You're not the doer.